Welcome to the Heartwork podcast, where we delve into stories, struggles, and triumphs of entrepreneurship, leadership, and personal growth. I'm Dr. Sara.
And I'm Dr. Marisa. We're here to guide practitioners, entrepreneurs, leaders, and those just navigating the complexities of life on a journey of discovery that explores the dance between passion and strategy, heart and hustle.
With candid conversations, insightful interviews, and plenty of laughs, get ready to uncover how leading with heart can transform your business and life. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of the Heartwork podcast. Today, Sara and I are really reflecting on our last year as we are in this first quarter of 2025. And what we've really noticed is the rhythms of our life, what we've been hearing a lot in conversations with other people, and where that really is leading our hearts in 2025. Recently, we released episodes about me selling the practice, and it is coming up on the 4 years that was built into the contract for holding the seller's note. So I'm actually receiving the last installment of payment next month, which has brought up some different emotions for me in closing of that chapter. Well, obviously I have a beautiful chapter here in Iowa with my practice here and my family and my home. And so people tell you all the time not to compare, but I think it's a natural human thing to just I did this once before somewhere. Yes, I was a different person. Yes, I'm totally different now. At the same time, there are threads of the methods of business that are very similar in the way that I practice. And so I had a very quick, fast-paced, thriving practice right from the get-go in the start. And it was definitely a little bit slower to pick up the second time around. And in doing a lot of inner work and talking with one of our heart coaches, Pablo, he's really encouraged me to think about the energy I brought to the practice the first time in Jersey with Altum and the energy I brought into the practice and the intention this time. And one of those threads seemed to be more around how back there, yes, I put so much work and effort into getting it ready to start. But when COVID hit and then I went through my introspective journey and was okay, at some point, I'm going to be leaving this practice. So I need to do everything that I can to just set it up to be the best, easy to step into practice possible. But there was this energy of not disconnectedness, because I certainly wasn't disconnected from wanting to see the practice thrive, be successful. I had a lot of investment in the practice. So did my family. And so did obviously the practice members we had. Well, at the same time, I knew that one day, it wouldn't be my forever. Mm-hmm. Here, when I opened up Homestead, I knew we're going to be here for the foreseeable future. This is where we're starting our life and want to start a family and things. So there's a little bit more strength to the desire of the roots of this practice, and then therefore the desire of the success of this practice. And I think holding on a little tightly to that intention has made me a little bit more focused on the nitty gritty steps of what needs to happen. What are our metrics? What are our stats? Where are we going? Are we projecting forward? Is it going fast enough? Is it going too slow? What's actually happening? And that energy of being hawkish in the business a little bit is actually energetically stalling some of the things that are meant to come in. We talk a lot about this conversation with abundance and mindset and positivity and actually casting the net wide and leaving space and room for things to grow actually can help call in abundance and movement much faster than feeling you've got two eyes focused on one aspect of things and are just really hyper focused in every single step, every single day. And so when I think back, truly the most abundant financial and personal time was actually in my most depressive state when I was trying to figure out how to sell Altum. I didn't know how the sale was going to happen. I didn't know how the hell I was going to be able to pay off a business loan and make sure that the business was successful and like move back to Iowa. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of visualizing, and not just like sitting there like visualizing like I want this to happen and I want to move and go, but like literally closing my eyes and imagining myself like crossing state line, imagining seeing the literal physical number of the sale in my bank account, like actually sitting and embodying and putting myself projectedly like in the space where Alex and I were like in a house together with our dog, and like it was our home and I had the key and I would open the door and come in and we'd be making dinner, like physically putting myself in that space with my mind and just experiencing the attachment to the dream, the attachment to my heart and the why behind it versus the how and the logistics of how it would actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I notice myself now being a little bit more attached to like the how it should happen and not just focusing on like the dream and the purpose and the why and the flourishment of that. And I think that that is honestly where the difference between having faith and fear comes into play, right? Because so much like me focusing in on the like every stat and the every statistics and the metrics is very much like me focused more in on it comes from a place of fear. Like, is this place going to make it? Like, are we going to be as successful? Like, why didn't it go as fast as Altum? Like, is it because of the economic climate? Is it because of COVID? Is it because people are online? Do I need to do different marketing or advertising? All of those things start rummaging and rolling through your brain instead of just like experiencing it and continuing to visualize what you want to see it flourish into, what you want to see it grow with. And that's more of the faith of the like, no, I trust myself that I will work what I need to do and proceed forward with the practice. And I also trust that the universe and life will provide for me what it needs to continue to move forward in that direction. So there is a big distinction between fear and faith, and having faith over fear, I think truly opens up your heart and opens up your world to experience more versus fear and the sense of lack and closing it off.
Right. That is so much easier said than done sometimes. So.
Literally.
When I'm hearing you talk, and
sounds really pretty when I talk about it, but I'm exposing it myself here.
Oh, I just think about like your journey, but then my journey and the work that we've done, and also just like the relatability. Obviously, it's so relatable, but for the people that are listening right now, like sometimes it just like I know for me, it can just feel so daunting to even sometimes have this like big dream, this big vision. At the end of the day, it's like, fucking, how do I get there though? You know, and that the difference of the, like you're saying, the faith and the fear, and really sitting in the present moment. And I know for me, some of the work that I've had to do is really dive into this, like peel back some of these layers of my early childhood, a lot of these like things that I've told myself from a very, very beginning, because that then projects itself so much into my day to day. And something that has come up just recently for me has been this perspective that when I was younger, right? I think you guys have heard this story that I got sick. I had this thing happen to me where in general, it wasn't at all any of my parents' fault, right? It wasn't my parents. They did not create a sickness to form in my body. They did not create this place where all of a sudden I had to go to a hospital and I had to rely on other people, right? But it's really easy for yourself to say inside, well, my parents didn't protect me. And then in turn, there's been some other things that have happened, that there was some safety aspects of my life that were trespassed on when I was a young child. And so I've had this like general sense of understanding of so much of my life is built upon me creating things to be safe and to create this like safety bubble for me. And money and success is one of those easily. And so when it comes to that place of like putting God kind of in this like box, my perspective around God is like, basically, sure, he's going to support me, but he's only going to support me so far. And then in turn, when I basically the aspect of me creating my safety bubble is me creating freedom to be incredibly successful, freedom to be incredibly profitable, for us to be able to expand and drive toward all these visions. But at the same time, the one that's in control of that safety bubble is Sara, outside of this like rhythm of like what you're saying, the difference between faith and fear. The fear aspect for me is a lot of that safety, right? So if I don't have safety, then the fear will come in and like, then I won't have anything, right? It's like that complete, like all or nothing attitude. A lot of times I'm very much of an all or nothing individual. And it's wild to how, I don't know, it's just been such a beautiful, crazy journey. But for me, like I'm learning more and more that when I ask myself the question, what is it that I'm being invited to consider and invited to actually like follow outside of maybe this perceived thing, that even because our mind can, like you're saying, our mind can come up with so many amazing things, which is going to set a tone for so much, like you're saying, like when you sit yourself into just the heart of it and the visualization of it. And you know that, man, I want to go here because this is going to give me so much life and joy and I'm excited about it. But what then also, if that's in 10 years, what if it doesn't happen that way? Are we so held on into like the outcome of that, you know? And so like I can get so lost, like you're saying, and when you get so lost in that, you can miss the present moment, and you can become these little like hawkish type individuals that are just trying to literally micromanage everything, micromanage your team, micromanage your outcome, micromanage your money, micromanage every aspect because you can't let go of control and trust that what's right in front of you. And that has been this, oh my goodness, it's just been a season of life for me, especially when it comes around money, of really understanding that. And for me, when it came to that realization, I will allow God to support me, quote unquote. He'll support me up to a certain point. But then money is the thing that's supporting me and keeping me safe for the rest of it. And then if I don't have any money, then it means that I'm not being supported and I'm not safe. And so it limits God's potential in my life, but also in the abundance that is promised for me. So just like what you were saying, it's going to only slow down my momentum and life's momentum if I keep allowing that to happen. Along with, at the same time, you can't necessarily always just like snap your fingers out of that, right? You have to become aware of that and be okay with saying, okay, I see this here. I'm very aware of this. And now God, allow me to be able to heal through this, but also will you show me what it is that I'm supposed to be running after? And then release the expectation of a timeline and a time frame. And that's exactly what you did. When you sold that practice, when you saw the abundance of that life, like, and all the things that came from that, there was literally no way anybody could have orchestrated a sell without you even opening like a practice in 6 months.
No.
There's no effing way that somebody could have put that in, like said, oh, this will be possible and you're going to be able to do this.
No. When I would talk to Alex about it, I would say, well, so-and-so, paid off their business loan in like this amount of years, and so-and-so paid off their student loans in 2 years. So like, what if I just did it for 2 years? I built it up. I got an associate in there. They wanted to buy it. Okay, well, if that doesn't work, like my lease is for 5 years. So no matter what, at the end of the day, like I could stay in it for 5 years. What if we lived in Jersey for 2.5 and then did half an hour? It was like all these thoughts of how, logistics. But energetically for us, that still came with resistance. It was like, this doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel right to think about that long of time, like just isn't it? And so it was like, fuck it, toss it up. And that's when I just started reaching out to people in June. I was like, I don't care who starts to see this and knows that, it was only in the Chiro world that I was putting it out there. So like none of my patients or like none of our people that were outside of that really got to see or were privy to that information. But once I started to actually just put a thing out there, put a feeler out there, but released the timeline of what would happen to the expectation, like someone's going to reach out to me or no one's going to reach out to me, just put it out there and then be like, okay, time to just focus in on the fact that like, okay, we got 2 weeks to prep because we're about to open our doors regardless. And meanwhile, then all of a sudden, like, have a couple conversations. It's like, whoa, okay. And then you get, again, attached to a timeline. Like someone tells you they're going to buy it in October. And then all of a sudden they pull out. And you're like, fuck. Now I'm just right back at the same place of like, wow, I got attached to this timeline. Yeah. It didn't work out. But then not even 30 days later, someone else literally physically came down, looked at it. And then 2 weeks later, I had an offer. Like we can get so enamored and attached to the outcome. And like, that's, I think the hard part too, with having goals and having KPIs, like you have to find the balance. Balance is such a shit word. You have to find the like, I don't know, the rhythm between having goals and setting goals and having something to work towards while also being able to release a little control of like how that shows up. And if it doesn't show up, does it mean that your worth declines with the fact that it didn't happen? Because sometimes you hit KPIs and sometimes you don't. If your worth is attached to that number, that outcome, you're going to constantly be chasing after something then, and you're energetically calling in the failure, the quote unquote failure that you may quote unquote see, even though it's not a failure, right? They're growing pains, they're lessons, they're learnings, they're redirections, their growth, their adaptabilities. But it's just so much easier said than done to think pretty and think open and think wide when we spend so much of our time doing.
Right.
And that might come with more strict parameters. And it's so finding the space, finding the rhythm between the two.
Yeah, I mean, you need both, right? You can't run a business without having the strategy. You can't run a business without having the systems. You can't run a business without having understanding of your numbers. Fully believe that. You can't, like, if you don't know what the nitty gritty of what's happening inside your business and what's happening with your team, there's also going to be leakage, 100%. However, at the same time, if you are just so hell bent on close fisting that thing with such a strong grip, with no release on it for how then those numbers evolve or how your team evolves or the goals and the objectives that you're trying to hit, you're only going to move it so far. And we've said this from the beginning, but you bleed into your practice, you bleed into your life, and you basically are going to infiltrate every aspect of your life based on how quote unquote healthy or healing your heart is. And if you are creating space to where it is built more out of fear or it's built more out of control, you're going to find that, like you said, you're going to literally like manifest it into your life because you're still going to have it. The energy is being put out. What you keep putting energy to builds an engine, and it's literally going to keep running it. So what a beautiful gift to be able to really invite yourself into a space of, for one, just awareness and harmony and rhythm within still having and understanding what's necessary, along with the same time releasing control.
Yeah. I think that's something that we all, I don't want to say struggle through, but we all like feel the ebb and the flow of that space. If we were to like give help and assistance, what are some of the ways that like we can be observant and curious with that? Because it is hard to find that middle ground. Because obviously, like, we want to set people up there. We're going to have KPIs. We're going to have objectives no matter what. Like, for example, we have a goal this month of seeing 31 new practice members. It's like a 20% increase from what we saw last January. We're currently at 7. And it's January 17th, right?
Well, so then I think my question would be, okay, you can set an objective. If you don't hit the objective, what happens inside your body or like what occurs? Are you just like so guilt-ridden and shame-filled and like all that craziness? And if that's the case, then that's something to reflect back on. Because that's ultimately going to be, if you're setting that up, then you're setting your team up for that too. And that's only a performance and result-driven aspect.
100%. So obviously I have no control over what's going to happen over the next 2.5 weeks, right? Like,
right.
I am not going to limit myself or say, oh my gosh, we're only at 7. Like, how the hell are we going to get there? Okay. So we're at 7. What's working? What's pulling in? Do we need to spend a little bit more energy in a certain area or not? Okay. Let's see how it continues to go. Let's continue to just move forward. But I also know energetically this week, I let go of 2 team members.
Mm-hmm.
So that is going to obviously affect our like rhythm and our preparation for being able to accommodate people in the practice, while also on the flip side, like that's the quote unquote potential negative side or the fear-based talking like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to set up our practice different. I'm going to have to block new practice members from coming in. Also, I've had examples this week of just so much life coming into the practice in different ways that actually are going to be able to potentially bring in more people further down the line. So sometimes we look at the expectation and we look at the KPI and the outcome, but we don't realize that it might be coming to us in a little bit of a different way. Or maybe next month it's going to be 60 new practice members that I'm going to have, and I don't even know it yet.
Exactly.
But when that outcome happens, celebrating that, being fruitful with it, sharing that with the team, If it doesn't happen, observing what's going on in your system. Are you cool and control? Do we have like the even keel level of water under the current of the ocean? Or are we riding the wave of the emotion back and forth? Like, I'm not good enough. It wasn't good enough. Something didn't happen this year. Or you start blaming other people, right? My team wasn't avid enough. The ads weren't good enough. I need to spend more here or do more there. What actually pops up for you in those moments?
Yeah, because those are going to be the things that if you're always pointing at something else, typically it's an indication that it's something more internal than it is on the outside.
Ooh, we had a situation like this last weekend. It's hard to look in the mirror sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, if we're looking for change from other people, it's only going to happen when we change ourselves and show up different.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, as leaders, that's the biggest opportunity that we have.
Absolutely.
To be able to reflect and look inward, along with then giving the opportunity for the people that we are in connection with, that we lead and that we employ to be able to do the same, with the expectation, obviously, of still doing a job. Wow.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful rhythm of leadership and heart and like in life, right? And at the end of the day, like, I don't know, our coach Pablo actually just said this yesterday. God is a strategist and knows how to get it done. Sometimes we just need to fucking get out of the way.
11 affirmation right now. It's a dance.
Yeah.
Like I literally think of it as a dance. Like sometimes stats and KPI and house lead, and sometimes show and heart leads, and you have to dance with that rhythm. And if one takes a little bit longer, or one's leading a little bit of the path, then you do a little spin and a twirl, or you two-step, or then you step on each other's toes. Like, can you get yourself out of it? Can you enjoy the dance? Or are you so focused on the moves and the breakdown that you're not just flowing and smiling and living with it?
That's the life I love to lead and I want to lead. And for those that you guys are listening, I think that's also potentially what is going to be attracting to your heart or attractive to your heart. And so we just appreciate you guys for joining us today. And we're excited to continue this conversation. If you loved what you heard, please share it. Please follow us, rate the show, and we'll see you next time.